Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Commissioner Davis, I wanted to follow up post the Boston bombing terrorist attack. By the way, you did a phenomenal job on, and really appreciate your leadership on that.
Thank you, Senator.
You came before this committee, and you and I talked about issues with the JTTF. I raised these issues with Director Comey of the FBI. And as I look at even just the background we got on this hearing today and what happened in Garland, Texas, in that situation, you also had the FBI tracking one of the individuals involved with the Garland attack, sent a memo to the Garland police and to the North Texas JTTF hours before the attack, but that information never got to the actual patrol officers that were there to protect. There was quite a security protection there at the Civic Center where this event was being happened. And what that makes me think is, as we talked about what happened post-Boston and things that needed to be communicated at the local level, something that Chief Sparks raised as well, is how do we stop that? How do we make sure that the reality is that it's a patrol officer that's likely to come upon one of these situations. The FBI isn't out roaming the streets in the way that the patrol officers do. And where are we now with the JTTFs in terms of disseminating that critical information down to the line officers? And have we improved on that? How do we get at this fundamental issue? And I was very interested that you brought up the issue of a coach. Who should that coach be? Because you talked about DNI. Right now, as I look at this system, it seems like the FBI is the coach, but we still have instances where, whether it's a security issue, whether it's a need-to-know issue, where the information is not getting to the front lines. So would love to get your impression, Commissioner, on that. Would love to get your impression as well, Commissioner Bratton, as you're obviously, and the Chief, anyone who wants to jump in.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that, and I had a great team in Boston. It was a real team effort there. Prior to the Boston incident, we had two special agents in charge in Boston, Warren Bamford and Rick Delorier. Both of those men were incredible partners, opened up the place to us. We worked very, very closely with them. Director Comey and I have spoken since I stepped down. I believe that the FBI wants to do the right thing. However, there are silos and bureaucracies involved, and when that happens, things start to break down. And despite the best intentions of everyone involved, it really is important that someone is auditing the functions. Every year, the FBI comes into the Boston Police Department and audits our motor vehicle checks to make sure that they're all legitimate. But who's auditing the larger issues? Who's looking at the transfer of information?
Is anyone doing that right now within the federal government?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
And so that really needs to happen. And I mentioned the DNI. I just think if all partners are equal, the coach can't be one of the partners. I think it needs to be somebody.
Agreed. It's got to be someone who's not directly in the line, is what you're saying.
Right, because then you have the same problem of being protective of your information. And it goes back to the old police, wanting to make the bus themselves. Everybody wants their own information because if you give it to somebody else, you might lose the arrest. But the other issue you brought up is extremely important, Senator, is the technology side of things. Going back to the NYPD, when those two officers were killed, Baltimore had information that was faxed. Pictures were faxed from the Baltimore police to the NYPD. The state of communication among police agencies is really reprehensible in this day and age, and the use of these devices that Commissioner Bratton has shown will help that. But that needs to be a nationwide initiative. It can't just be department by department, because when you set up individual protocols, you have other communications problems. So there's two levels that you talked about that are extremely important, Senator.
Commissioner Bratton, wanted to get your impression.
Prior to your arrival, I had displayed a smartphone device that the department has customized and will by March be in the hands of every one of the 36,000 New York City police officers. It's a model and a device that can be shared with American law enforcement, and it was developed very specifically after the murder of our two officers, because the messaging, traditional messaging, the length of time it took to get information out to the field was too long. And in any event, even as the information arrived in New York, it would have been too late to save the lives of those two officers. With this instant messaging now, I can instantly send out an alert to 36,000 officers. I can override everything else they're doing and indicate this is a terrorist alert, here's a threat on your life alert. And the capability can effectively be expanded nationwide with the coordination, collaboration of capabilities. So we are moving in a direction that, thanks to technology. On the issue of collaboration and leadership, we're very fortunate with the leadership of Director Comey, who Commissioner Davis and I have had extensive involvement with. He's going to be around for about 8 years, and that's essential because in our world, people come and go very quickly. He is committed to this. He is trusted by us. He is committed to the idea of sharing. And the relationship we have in New York City with our FBI is a direct result of his leadership indicating that you will get along with the NYPD. And my commitment on my end, the NYPD, you will get along with the FBI. And it's essential. So the benefit we have at this time is the technology is becoming available. And I think I would argue that the leadership support of our collaborative relationships is available and will be around for a while.
Thank you. And obviously, I think as you think about, you've talked about resources, this would be worthy of a national investment because we think
so.
about both in the terrorism and the law enforcement context. This would be a huge protection measure for the country. I wanted to follow up. You mentioned briefly, Commissioner Bratton, forfeiture. And recently, in the end of the year budget deal, one of the things that got grabbed is over $1 billion in forfeiture money. And
Which is a major mistake and
yeah,
something that
and
we
so
resent tremendously.
So that's why I'm asking you about it, because, I mean, as I look at what my police officers are doing and my law enforcement in New Hampshire with the forfeiture money, we did some really important things, for example, on increasing funding for first responders and, for example, the heroin epidemic facing my state. Right. But then on the other hand, I think people around here aren't understanding the value and taking the forfeiture resources and putting it back to help address the problems on the street for our first responders. So I just wanted to put that on the record and just make sure that people understand here, we got to turn this around. We shouldn't do this again. These resources are critical to first responders.
These could not have been bought without $160 million of forfeiture money from my local district attorney's asset forfeiture fund. Didn't come from the federal government, fortunately, because it's no longer there.
Thanks, Senator Ayotte. 2 points. I don't think anybody's asked to have the Benz report entered into the record. I'll do so without objection. The other, I actually circled your comment about auditing, and I would really like to work with you, Commissioner Davis, to develop, how do you audit so it's a positive thing as opposed to viewed negatively. But I'd encourage any colleague to work with me on that. I turned around to my staff and said that's a piece of legislation that we should work on as a result of this hearing. Senator McCaskill.